I know you. You're that jaywalking punk anarchist.
Hello, I'm the Radical Reviewer, and I've been thinking lately, I'm a dirty capitalist, right? Like, I own the means of production. This camera and lighting equipment, the microphone, the books, the studio space, the computer, and the various software. And I create a commodity, these videos, and I take my videos to the market and make them available in exchange for ad revenue and Patreon bucks. So, I'm a dirty capitalist, right? Now, admittedly, over the years, there has been more accessibility and affordability of technology. It has become much easier to just make your own movies or music or video essays or whatever and throw them up on bandcamp.com or youtube.com and make money on it. But is this owning the means of production and being a capitalist in the Marxist sense?
What about YouTubers? Which side of the revolution are we on?
Well, let's have a look at all this. I think owning the means of production as a YouTuber is a little like being an author, or maybe more like being an Uber driver. Yes, you might own your computer and your copy of word processor or whatever, but you don't own the publishing company. Maybe you own your own car, but you do not own the Uber app. I might own the means of production that produce my video, but I do not own the distribution, the servers, the code, the software, that is YouTube.com. And so, allow me to make a Marxist analysis of YouTube content creation, and find out if I'm a dirty capitalist or not. To start, let's look at making money on YouTube. Well, from an article titled How Google Makes Money on Investopedia, although Google makes some of its money from people buying cloud storage, Play Store apps, Chromebooks, and the like, Google actually makes an overwhelming majority of its money from ads. Big spenders bidding for top spots in Google searches, advertisements on websites that are members but not actually Google owned, and advertisers paying to play ads on relevant, or sometimes not so relevant, YouTube videos. The article states, advertisers pay Google each time a visitor clicks on an advertisement. A click might be worth anywhere from a few cents to over $50 for highly competitive search terms, including insurance, loans, and other financial services. By collecting folks' search histories and watch histories and other relevant data, and selling targeted ad space to advertisers, Google makes almost $200 billion a year, which is then divided up between various employees, from entry-level minimum wage workers to the salaries of top-level engineers and executives, and the profits for shareholders. But wait a minute, I don't work for Google as an employee, nor do I own Google stocks. I'm more like an independent contractor. Again, like an Uber driver. So let's look at how I make money on YouTube. I'll talk about Patreon in just a second, but for now, let's look at how I make money off YouTube ads. I don't do YouTube memberships or video sponsors, so let's ignore that for today. Again, according to our friends at Investopedia, from an article titled How YouTube Ad Revenue Works, there is a 45-55 split for all content creators. So Google keeps 45% of all YouTube advertising on your videos, and you get the remaining 55%. The article continues. In 2013, the average cost per thousand, CPM, for YouTube was $7.60. CPM, cost per thousand, is an industry term that represents revenue per thousand views. And if we look at my top earning videos of the last 365 days, we see that I had an absolute banger, my Atlas Shrugged video, which made almost $480 total. But most of my videos make between $4 and $60. If we look month to month, the numbers are all over the place, from around $50 to the $777 I made in June when the Atlas Shrugged video was released. But if we take an average of every month of the last 365 days, I make around $160 a month from YouTube ads. Why am I talking about all this? Well, I guess to say, 1, that Google is taking 45% of the ad revenue made, keeping almost half for themselves as owners of the site, making money, profiting off of my labor. And 2, showing you how YouTube earnings function. Now let's look at making money on Patreon. On Patreon, I am a founder tier account, so they take 5% of my earnings. As of now, I have 112 wonderful Patreon supporters, and I receive $335 a month from them, meaning Patreon makes a measly $16.75 off of my supporters, though this doesn't include payment processing fees. If we take an average month of YouTube ad revenue, again that's about $160 a month, and add that to the $335 a month I make on Patreon, then that gives me a whopping $500 a month, rounding up and not including taxes. Pretty impressive in the grand scheme of things, a lot more than I thought I would make doing this. It's about a fifth of my overall income, the rest I make washing dishes, painting houses, and things like that. Now you might be thinking, yeah, okay, you're a small channel that doesn't make much money, but surely someone with several 100,000 or even several million subscribers is a capitalist, right? I mean, look at how much money they're making on their content. And now you're thinking, wait a minute, how did you read my mind just now? Does this have something to do with being a talking dog? Is there even a voice coming from my speakers right now, or are you actually telepathically communicating with me? Well, in regards to those last questions, don't worry about that. But in regards to your previous questions, this is actually quite interesting. See, Marxism isn't really about how much or how little money you make, but rather about your relationship to the means of production, and where your income comes from. And YouTube is a very broad platform, which makes this distinction particularly difficult. Large channels like PewDiePie or iDubbbz TV might still be proletariat in the Marxist sense, despite making bank on their content. While channels that hire out staff to work for them, such as the CBS News channel or the WWE channel, Marx would say that these are capitalist. For my part, none of my income is based on the labor of others. I do not profit off of employees, collect on stocks or rents or investments or anything like that. My income is from earnings. But I suppose that brings us to looking at my YouTube income through a Marxist lens. Well, first, let's cover some big concepts in Marxism. To start, let's look at LTV, the labor theory of value. In short, the labor theory of value argues that if commodities are bought and sold at their value, then it is only labor that adds additional value to a commodity. If I buy wood, I couldn't exactly turn around and sell that wood for a huge profit. But if I turned that wood into some furniture, I've used my labor to add value to the wood, and now I can sell it for more than what I bought it for, and I will have made a profit. And now you're thinking, what if a robot makes the furniture? Is it still profitable? Good question. And also, how did you hack my Google account and add questions into this script? But machinery itself is also just a commodity, and doesn't add additional value of its own. If I buy a machine that turns wood into chairs, I'm buying the machine at its proper value. I will not pay more or less for the machine than what I will get out of it. The machine does not produce additional value because I bought it at its value. Well, then why would I automate anything? Because I might increase my production or cheapen the cost of labor, which have their own benefits, even if by decreasing the necessary labor time to create my product, I have decreased the value of my product. This is why a handcrafted bookshelf would cost way more than these IKEA bookshelves I have. And the same goes for all commodities, even YouTube content. It is not the precious metals and fiber optics or 5G or whatever the heck YouTube is made out of that gives it its value, but rather the work of Google employees creating and maintaining the site, and content creators uploading their content that add value and create a profitable commodity. Similarly, my computer or camera or microphone on their own do not add value to my videos, but my combining these objects to create a commodity, a video essay for others to enjoy, then I have created additional value. Okay, so that's a crash course on the labor theory of value. Now let's look at cycles in capitalism. Marx divides capitalist and worker into two relationships with the economy. CMC, meaning commodity, money, commodity, and MCM1, meaning money, commodity, money prime. A worker has a CMC relationship with capitalism. They take a commodity, their labor, and they sell it to a capitalist for money, which they then use to buy commodities, food, clothes, and shelter, in order to survive. And because the capitalist is profiting from the worker comes out of this cycle basically where they left off. It's not like they're selling their labor for vastly more than it's actually worth. Capitalists, on the other paw, have an MCM1 relationship with capitalism. They take their money and buy commodities, raw materials, means of production, and labor power, which they combine to create a commodity, which they sell on the market to make more money, making a return on their investment, making a profit. Now sure, these distinctions aren't so cut and dry. Ultimately, the difference between a capitalist and worker, bourgeois and proletariat, isn't so much about the different things you do to make money, as much as it's about your primary source of income. Is your income primarily from earnings, from your own labor, and so you would like to work as leisurely as possible for as much pay as possible? Or is your income primarily from profits, from the labor of others, hiring employees, investments, rents, and so you would like others to work for you as hard as possible for as cheaply as possible to ensure that you receive the highest profits possible? Let's look at some examples. A brain surgeon might make a lot of money in earnings, but it is still just earnings and not profit. The profits are made by those that own the insurance companies or the hospital, which profit off of the brain surgeon's labor. Someone who owns a coffee stand might own capital and even be exploiting their own employees. But if they also put in 40+ hours a week at the coffee stand themselves, then they are making a portion of their income off of earnings and another portion from profits. Maybe a cashier at a corporate chain owns some stock in the company, thus owning some capital, technically, but their bills are overwhelmingly paid through their wages, not their profits. And there's of course folks who make most of their income from profits, from the labor of others. People who own businesses, stocks, rents, investments, franchises, capitalist profits. So the important question is, what portion of your income is made from your labor as earnings, and what portion is from the labor of others as profits? Okay, so by this metric, YouTube as a platform is all over the place. It might still be primarily folks making earnings from their content that they make, but these days, mainstream studios are uploading clips from their TV programs onto their YouTube channels, or worse, funding corporate-backed fake authentic channels. And over the years, some channels have grown to be capitalist entities themselves. But this channel, like most other channels on YouTube, is certainly not capitalist, since my income is made primarily from my labor as earnings. But let's apply all this stuff to my YouTube content creation anyway and see where it takes us. First, I read a book. The people who cut the logs and worked at the paper mill and made the paper, and the person who wrote the text, and the people who printed the pages and combined them into a book, the salesperson who sold me the book. This whole process is filled with workers living off of their own labor and wanting to work as leisurely as possible for as much pay as possible, and people living off of their labor. The owner of the logging company, the owner of the paper mill, the owner of the publishing company, the bookstore, and so on, wanting their workers to work as hard as possible for as cheaply as possible in order to get the highest profits possible. Next, I start writing a script, usually on Google Docs, so that I can edit the script on my phone on my lunch breaks at work, or sometimes while sitting in the bathroom at work, which is totally not what I'm doing right now while I'm writing this part of the script. Anyway, the same process happens again. Workers living off of their own labor, mining the precious metals and plastics and assembling the phone and laptop, and the software engineers creating and maintaining Google Docs, as well as my home and work internet connections and all of that. And again, capitalists who own the mines, own the Foxconn factory that probably made my phone and laptop, owning the Best Buy where I bought them, Comcast or Xfinity or whatever, owning and maintaining my internet connection, and all of that. Finally, I make my video. With my microphone and camera and lighting set up, my camera human filming me in front of my bookshelf, then I edit the whole thing together on my computer. And this is all probably starting to sound like a broken record at this point, but workers living off of their own labor, making the camera, the mic, the lighting equipment, the software, and the capitalist owners of Audio-Technica, AVS Video Editor, I'll probably buy Premiere when I can afford a new laptop, hopefully soon, Canon cameras, and so forth, making the profits. And now we've got our final product, a YouTube video essay ready to upload onto YouTube.com. And in rolls the fat stacks of cash from ads and Patreon in exchange for my uploaded video. So there you have it. Me making a little earnings off of my own labor, and the workers filming, acting in, designing, and assembling the ads that appeared on my video making earnings off of their labor, and the software designers who maintain and update YouTube and Patreon making earnings off of their labor. And the capitalist owners of YouTube, owners of Patreon, owners of whatever company was represented in the ad, an insurance company probably or whatever, making money off the labor of others as profits. So there you have it, a Marxist analysis of YouTube content creation. Let's go back to our examples from earlier in the video. Some corporate-owned YouTube channels are like the brain surgeon and hospital owner example, a host making bank, but ultimately the capitalist owner controlling the channel and profiting off of the host's labor. Some channels are more like the coffee stand owner with the employees, both hiring employees and doing much of the work themselves, both making profits and earnings. But most of us, even many of the channels making bank on this site, are basically Uber drivers. We own the equipment to make the videos, but Google and Patreon own the sites, the servers, the apps. We make the earnings off of our labor, and they make the capitalist profits. So it turns out I'm not a dirty capitalist after all. What a relief. But now you're thinking, Radical Reviewer, I paid really close attention, and dang it, I am still confused. Maybe I need a little bit more of a crash course on Marxism. Well, you're in luck, because Zex's great video on class struggle and the state pairs nicely with this video, so go check that out if you haven't seen it already. I also did a review of Marx's Capital for Beginners, so you might want to look there. And hopefully in a few weeks I will have finished my review of Wage, Labor, and Capital and Value, Price, and Profit by Marx, so check back here for that one if you'd like. And as always, I'd like to thank my wonderful patrons. Your tremendous support has allowed me to get dog insurance, which is wonderful. You've allowed me to support other creators I couldn't otherwise support, gotta love that. And you've provided me with some extra funds for books and dog toys and things like that. So thank you for rewarding me with wonderful earnings as opposed to exploitative profits. That's really awesome, and I appreciate you folks a lot. And if you like what I do here and you'd like to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/radicalreviewer. And if you're interested in radical theory, looking for a book recommendation or whatever, you can get your radical reviews here with the Radical Reviewer. Thanks for watching.